I want to get right to Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger, who's with us now. Congressman, what went through your mind when you heard this audio today?
It was disgusting. I mean, I heard the audio parts and then I actually read the transcript, and I would encourage everybody to spend the time and read the transcript, because in it you see, threats made, threatening, in essence, a crime to the Secretary of State. You see the repeating of conspiracy theories that you see on the internet that get disproven, but the president believes these, or at least he's saying he believes them. And then again, just saying, we want people that'll basically find the votes for us. It's disgusting. And quite honestly, it's going to be interesting. All these members of Congress that have now come out and said they're going to object to the election. I don't know how you can do that right now with a clear conscience, because this is so obviously beyond the pale, is probably not even the way to describe it.
Do you see this serving as a red line for your GOP colleagues who have up to this point stood neck and neck with this president?
I don't know. There were a few times I thought we'd had red lines in the past. It's very different, though. And this is what I think people need to understand. We've reached a very different demarcation. It's one thing to say, I support President Trump prior to the election and to vote for him, and that's your right and everything else. After this, though, when he loses and we're threatening a peaceful transition of power and we're finagling with the very Constitution that we rely on to keep peace in this country, that is very different. And, we are not going to be here to pick the electors that we want. We're supposed to vote simply that the state that sent them. That's our job. But we are in this constant moment of conspiracy theories, and people have been overloaded with so much misinformation that, and I don't blame them, I understand it, they don't know where else to turn because there's so much information that they just pick somebody they trust. And leaders of Congress are misleading people daily in this by not pushing back.
There's so few Republicans like yourself to say what you're saying. Do you feel like you're just on an island right now?
That's actually exactly what I told somebody. It feels like you're on an island. And, look, there's a lot of people that I think will become more outspoken. I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for them. You're not going to have all members of the Republican House, vote to object to the electors. But I just think this is different than saying maybe I don't agree with his Afghanistan policy or some policy issue, or I didn't like the way he said something. This is about the very nature of the Constitution. And to my Republican friends out there, listen, if we win the presidency in 4 years and the Democrats try to do the same thing, I don't think they will, but if they do, you have no moral authority to be upset by it. If you voted for this, you have no moral authority.
Your Democratic colleague, Congressman Hank Johnson, tweeted that this move by the president is a violation of state and federal law. And he added that he will introduce a resolution of censure tomorrow calling on Trump to resign now. What do you think? What should Congress do?
I don't really know what we can do at this moment. As I think it was Mr. Scaramucci on prior said, look, there's 2 or 3 weeks left. The guardrails of the Constitution will hold. Everybody that has been convinced that January 6th is going to be the miraculous beginning of the president's second term, they're going to be let down. Now, they'll find somebody else to blame. Trust me, it's not going to be, themselves. So, but I just don't know where we can go from here besides speaking out, saying this should never become normal and ensuring that the peaceful transition of power happens.
What is your message right now to the more than 150 Republican lawmakers who are currently planning to object to certifying Biden's victory this Wednesday?
Well, I'll tell them here the same thing I've told them all in person and in conference calls, which is this is far beyond anything that is just a political thing or worrying about the base or worrying about an election. You just got sworn into your next term, for goodness sakes. I mean, we ask young people to give their lives to defend this country. We have to be willing to give our careers for the same thing.
Do you think they're attempting a coup?
I'm not going to use that kind of language because I think it's counterproductive. I do think, though, if they, by voting to object to the electors and change the outcome of the election, they are absolutely going against the will of the people. You may not like it, right? You may not like the outcome of this election. Guess what? There's another election in 2 years, and there's a presidential election in 4. Make that your call to work harder. But we don't overthrow the will of the people in this country. It is the only thing that takes us from being an extraordinary country to just one of the other ones.
Georgia's Secretary of State, we heard, push back on the president's false claims. And he also tweeted this: respectfully, President Trump, what you're saying is not true. The truth will come out. But it's really only up to, you and your colleagues in Congress to hold this president accountable. I mean, if this slides with no consequences, what does that mean for this country's democratic system going forward?
Well, I think the fact that there's even not necessarily just an objection. Objections have happened in the past, but the fact that you're going to have a senator or a number of senators, and you're going to have a number of House members, and now it's becoming a litmus test for, are you a conservative, for goodness sakes? Which I would argue, if you vote for this thing, you're not. I think what the damage it has in the long term and in the short term is pretty clear. And all I can do, and I would encourage my other, friends out here to do, is to just think about, how is this going to look in 2 or 4 years if you're not worried about the constitutional part of it? I don't think that in 2 or 4 years anybody's going to look back and say, boy, if there were only more people, that would have been good for this country. I think once the president is out of office and once kind of that spell wears off, there are going to be a lot of people embarrassed by this. I hope not, but I'm afraid there will be.
I spoke with former Secretary of Defense William Cohen earlier this evening, who is also a Republican. He basically said he thinks it's time to start over. He thinks there should be maybe a new party. What do you think? Is it time for a new party?
I think the barriers to a new party in this country are so high. For instance, in Illinois, you'd have to get like 20,000 petition signatures. If you're an established candidate, it's like 1,500. I think the key and what I'm focused on is restoring our GOP, is to bring the GOP back, not to necessarily what we were 40 years ago, 20 years ago, somebody that can understand the voice of the people that feel left out, but do it in a way that unifies this country and holds precious this democracy that is so fragile. And what we've been doing lately is certainly not that. So I'm going to fight tooth and nail inside the GOP. It may cost me, but the bottom line is, I've paid higher prices in my life before.
Congressman Adam Kinzinger, you are courageous. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for what you're doing.
It shouldn't have to be courageous, but in this day and age, I guess so. Thanks.
You're right, but keep speaking.